You just don't care, no. I don't wanna play, baby, I'm just fine. I don't need you anymore.
For content information and the link to the written version of this video, please check the description below. I would like to start this video off by saying Happy Non-Binary and Awareness Week to all my non-binary family out there. This video is part of my Under the Queer Umbrella series, but it will be structured slightly differently. Instead of going over different non-binary identities, which I will be doing in a future video, this video will be discussing what being non-binary means, the history of the non-binary community, including the discussion of historical figures who may have been non-binary, celebrating famous non-binary and or gender-fluid celebrities in pop culture who do so much for our community, discussing representation in media and literature, and my own personal experience of being non-binary. We have a lot to discuss, so I will be breaking this video into two parts. This is part one, where I will focus on the definition of non-binary and the history of non-binary, and in the next video, which will be up tomorrow, hopefully, I will be focusing on non-binary in pop culture and my own personal experience. Consider supporting me via Cash App. You can help directly with my transition journey by donating to my GoFundMe. My commissions are open. You can email me for more information, and also don't forget to subscribe. Okay, now back to the video. Disclaimer. I've gone into this video with the intention to educate and celebrate the beauty of non-binary identities. If I've gotten any information wrong, if you're comfortable, please feel free to let me know in the comments, and I will amend the blog entry version of this video where needed. You will be able to find the links to all of the people mentioned in this video and their Wikipedia pages by clicking on the links in the description. Wikipedia, of course, is not the most accurate website, but it is a good starting point. I recommend going to the resources section at the bottom of the wiki pages and starting your own research journey from there. Also, this video will likely be released on Saturday, or it's already been released on Saturday if you're reading this, which is the last day of Non-Binary Awareness Week. I didn't realise it was this week until Tuesday, so I had to scramble to get this completed before the week ended. With me, it's always Non-Binary Awareness Week anyway, so I will be celebrating it still this weekend. I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. What is non-binary? Non-binary is an umbrella term for all identities that are not 100% binary. This includes a vast array of identities, including masc, femme, neutral, and androgynous aligned ones, all existing as their own umbrella terms, holding hundreds if not thousands of their own identity terms. I will be going over some of these terms in a series of future entries, but for now I want to make a couple of things clear. Non-binary does not mean you have to sit between man and woman. You can sit anywhere on a gender spectrum, including within the sections including men and women. There is no wrong way to be non-binary. The term takes on its own meaning to all who use it, making it one of the most diverse communities that exists under the queer umbrella, a community I am proud to say I myself am a part of. Some non-binary individuals refer to themselves as transgender, and some do not. Some even refer to themselves as cisgender or cisgent, and many do not. As I said, there is no right way to be non-binary. There are even many ways to refer to those who use the term for themselves. NB is one of the more common abbreviations, but not all use it for themselves. Many non-binary individuals even have surgery to aid in their transition, and many do not. I am seeking affirmation surgery myself. As I mentioned, my GoFundMe is linked at the bottom of this video, is linked in the description of this video. If you would like to support me there. Non-binary individuals can wear whatever clothes they like. They don't have to conform to anything. Non-conforming is a large part of the community, but it doesn't equate to being non-binary. Also, non-binary individuals can use any pronouns, not just they, them. They can use she, her, he, him, it, its, their own name, which is just one form of the many neopronouns that exists. It's important to respect pronouns and to try and get them right, as well as respecting the name or names on individual users to make their existence a lot more comfortable. Okay, so now we've discussed briefly on what non-binary means. Let's talk about its history. The history of the non-binary community. Non-binary is a relatively new term. It came about as an alternative version of the term genderqueer, which was first used during the mid-90s, claimed to have been coined by Ricky Ann Wilchins, who used the term in a 1995 essay which was published in the first ever issue of Your Face to describe any individual who is gender non-conforming. Genderqueer is a term still used today alongside non-binary, but those who are non-binary do not have to use both terms. The non-binary flag was created in February 2014 by Kai Rowan to represent all non-binary individuals. For trans non-binary individuals, the white line in the trans flag is there to represent them. The non-binary community is a marginalised group whose rights are often looked over in favour of the rights of those who exist on the binary spectrum, such as trans women and trans men, and because of this it is difficult for our voices to be heard. It wasn't until 2016 that James Clifford Shoup became the first person in the US who was able to obtain legal recognition for his non-binary gender identity at the time. He has since become critical of surgically transitioning and of the existence of gender identity as a whole. Even though he essentially disagrees with our existence, which is ridiculous, he still represents a turning point in our history. As long as humans have existed, those who exist outside of the binary have. Many indigenous cultures have their own terms that have been around for hundreds of years, and one common link between all of them is that members of their communities who exist outside of the binary are often teachers, healers, or wise people, making them crucial to their communities and cultures. Colonialists tried to erase these individuals many times throughout history, but they still continue to exist. It's important that we listen to indigenous communities and support those who are affected by these attempts to eradicate and rewrite their stories. Without them, the modern non-binary community would not exist as it is. If you're enjoying this video, please consider supporting me over on my Patreon. For just £1 a month, you will get to see all of my videos a day before they're released publicly. That's £1 a month on my Patreon. Link is down below. Historical figures who defied the binary. Since we've gone over some of the more notable points of non-binary history, I would like to discuss some historical figures who defied the binary. The term non-binary didn't exist during the lifetimes of these individuals, and we will never know if they'd have adopted the term or not, if they knew of it. Their stories either way are still extremely important to our history and should be talked about. So here is a non-comprehensive list of historical figures that defy the binary. It's important to note that whilst there are accounts of gender non-conforming men, they are few and far between compared to gender non-conforming women. Most of these figures use their gender expression to fight against misogynistic ideals that exist within society, and while they all would have referred to themselves as women, we cannot know for sure whether part of the reason they expressed the way they did was due to their individual sense of gender. It's important that we acknowledge them as important figures to women and the non-binary community. It's also important to note that just because most of these examples refer to gender non-conforming women, this does not mean that being non-binary is specifically linked to being a woman. Some women are non-binary, but not all non-binary individuals are women. These figures likely would have used pronouns associated with their assigned gender at birth, but since we have few personal accounts confirming this, I will be referring to most of them by neutral pronouns they, them. If you know of any historical figures that should be added to this list, I would love to hear them in the comments. I especially would like to hear of individuals who defied the binary that are people of colour, as it was extremely difficult to find examples of people of colour who defied the binary. It was difficult enough to find white European individuals, and this is unfortunate because people of colour and indigenous people and communities are so important to our history and deserve to be represented. With that said, let's get into some of the historical figures that defied the binary. Chevalier d'Eon, born 1728 and died in 1810. During their life, the Chevalier presented both as a man and as a woman. They were a French diplomat, spy, and soldier fighting during the 7 Years' War. Described to have androgynous physical characteristics by both those they encountered and by doctors after their death, it is possible that the Chevalier may have identified as an intersex individual if they had lived today. And with them living many decades as a man and living their last years as a woman, it is possible they may have also identified as gender fluid. Both intersex and gender fluid individuals are huge parts of the non-binary community. It's impossible to know how they would have been identified today, but it's incredible to read about someone who even during their lifetime made such an impact on the lives of those they met, or who knew of them. One thing for certain is that they truly were a remarkable individual and icon for all non-binary individuals to look up to years later. Eleanor Reichner, born unknown and died unknown. Eleanor lived during the 14th century. Not much is known about them, but what is known is that they were arrested for prostitution in December 1394, which led to their interrogation, during which they recounted how they learned the trades of prostitution and needlecraft. Eleanor is known to have slept with both men and women during their time as a sex worker. During their interrogation, he introduced himself as Eleanor, and this is important to note because many articles about them often refer to them by their dead name, a name which is no longer used by an individual. The fact Eleanor refers to themselves as Eleanor means that we should not be referring to them by the name they were given at birth. If Eleanor were alive today, it's possible they would have identified as a trans woman, but we will never know for certain. Either way, Eleanor will go down in history as someone who knew who they were and didn't care what any other had to say about it. Someone who defied the gender roles of the time and will forever be an icon. I love Eleanor, and I can't wait to celebrate her day when it comes in December. Emperor Elagabalus, born 204 and died 11th of March 222, aged 18, and reigned 8th of June 218 to 11th of March 222. Elagabalus may have gone down in history as one of Rome's worst emperors, with their controversial takes on religion and the way their extreme sexual promiscuity, which was apparently too much for even ancient Rome. But they are also notable for defying gender norms of the time, preferring to be referred to as Domina, meaning lady, as opposed to Dominus, meaning lord. Elagabalus is known to have sought out information about the least painful surgery to remove their genitalia, which is one of the earliest examples of gender affirmation surgery to exist. If they lived today, it's likely they would have referred to themselves as a trans man, but of course, we will never know. George Eliot, born 1819 and died in 1880. George Eliot was the pen name of Mary Ann Evans. Mary wrote under the pen name George Eliot to escape the stereotype of women's writing which was prevalent during the Victorian era, when they gained their fame. During this time, women were expected to only be able to write romantic novels. It's worth noting that this stereotype still persists to this day. Which is why I wanted to include Mary on this list. Mary may not have been her time's equivalent of a binary, and Elias is certainly not evidence to claim as much, but that doesn't mean she can't be an important figure in the community's history. Something so simple as writing under a pen name and changing even just a few perception of societal gender roles is a huge step in the right direction for society to accept those who don't exist on the binary altogether. Mary was such a talented author that even Queen Victoria was a fan of her work. So was queer legend Virginia Woolf. Queer or not, Mary deserves to be looked upon as an inspiration for all of us to break stereotypes and dare to simply exist as ourselves. Joan of Arc, born 1412 and died 1431. I'm sure we all know who Joan of Arc is, so instead of focusing on what they achieved, which was a lot, definitely check out their wiki page in the description, I would like to focus more on their defiance of gender roles. Despite being held on trial for the crime of wearing men's trousers, Joan stood their ground and even allowed themselves to be burned at the stake. Most historians would argue this was solely due to religious views, but those historians also see the term wife in a letter from one 19th century woman to another and call them friends. The point is, we don't know what was going on in Joan's head. It's possible they continued to find the binary for religious reasons and as a screw you to the English, but it's also possible they did it because it's just who they were. Either way, Joan is an important figure in the history of defined binary and gender norms, and that should not go unrecognised. We were born 1849 and died in 1896. Weaver was a Zuni Native American from New Mexico. They were a fibre artist, weaver and potter. Weaver was an important cultural ambassador for all indigenous Americans, but particularly for the Zuni. They served as a contact point and educator for many European American settlers. Weaver was notably an Ihamana. Those are male-bodied individuals that take on social and ceremonial roles usually performed by women. Their clothing is often androgynous, being a mixture of both men's and women's clothing of the time. Weaver used the pronouns they, them alongside other pronouns such as she, her, and he, him. This is notable because it acts as proof they, them pronouns are not a modern invention, as many gender critics like to argue. Weaver was described by their friend Matilda Cox Stevenson as the most intelligent person in the Pueblo. Weaver could speak English, which made it far easier for them to interact with the European American settlers and more than likely aided them when they met President Grover Cleveland. Weaver was an awesome individual that not only represented their culture, but helped educate people on their existence as someone living outside of the gender binary. We need more individuals like Weaver here today. We need to take their example, be ourselves, and educate others on who we are, which is something I personally aim to do. Thank you, Weaver, for being you. You are truly an inspiration to us all. So that was the video. This was part one of the two-part video series, I suppose, where we focus on non-binary identity. I love learning about these historical figures and how they act as inspiration for us today. In the next part, I will be discussing pop culture icons who are non-binary or gender fluid or genderqueer, as well as talking about my own personal experience of being non-binary. If you would like to see this video, if you would like to see that video, please consider subscribing. I am aiming to get 75 subscribers by the end of July. I was able to reach my last goal of 50, and I would really like it if I could make 75 by the end of July. So again, I thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe, support me by donating, etc, etc. You know the rules. Well, not the rules, you know the gig. So subscribe, like, share, and I definitely want to hear your comments on what you think about these historical figures that I mentioned in this video, as well as who you think I should have added in this video, and I may even go over some of them, if there's enough of them, in a future entry. Again, for the final time, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!